In transformation, when 2% of a population begin to think in more liberated and spiritually open ways, a new level of consciousness will awaken, bringing about a new reality for the total population. Join me, Jael McLean, confidence coach, business owner, musician, health and fitness enthusiast, transformational instigator, and your host of the 2% podcast in creating a new reality of spiritual awareness, confidence, and authenticity. Hello and welcome to the 2% Podcast, Season 2, your source for empowerment, expansion, and elevation. Today, we are joined by my friend, attorney, transformational trainer, and coach, Holiday Russell.
Hi, Jael. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you. It is so great to have you today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me. It's a privilege. A lot of people start first and foremost, but I don't have a first and foremost. I like to think that I play in a state of harmony. Although the thing I've been practicing at the longest is the law. I've been a business lawyer for over 30 years, but through that process in later years, I did some transformational work and became a certified transformational trainer. I've done a lot of coaching work and obtained a credential as a certified ontological coach from the International Coach Federation. I'm also a photographer for decades and decades. A dad, a brother, a spouse, all those things that we play out in life.
You and I met earlier this year. I was enrolled in Ideal Coaching Global, studying to become a certified coach, and you came and were one of the guest speakers.
Yeah, that was Ideal Coaching Global, where I graduated and got the coaching credential from, and to this day, years afterwards, I continue to do a learning call for them, for Margaret Wheatley, and some of the work that Margaret Wheatley has done. And that's one of my great delights, is I get to do that with every generation. That's how we met.
And that's where I became a fan of yours, and I knew I wanted to connect with you because of your interest in the quantum aspect.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot in that book. It's what's the book? Leadership in the New Science. That's it.
Yes.
Leadership in the New Science.
Great read. Definitely recommend that to the listeners.
For sure.
We briefly, in that same conversation, you touched on The Matrix. And that has been one of my favorite movies since it came out. One of my favorite quotes, the agent has already found Neo, and Neo's on the phone with Morpheus in his office building. So he's looking out the window of this high-rise building, and he says, "Why is this happening to me? What did I do?" And when I heard that, I thought how that is so reflective of how when I was living unconsciously, I thought things are happening to me and I can't explain them, or go into that victimhood of what did I do, exactly like Neo said. That brought forth the distinction of, in transformation, what we call the drift. And the drift is a current of unconsciousness in the totality of society. And that showed me how I was living unconsciously before transformation and being a victim to my circumstances.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on this collective unconsciousness?
That's such a large conversation. I don't begrudge people who sit in the drift. I remember the first time I heard that term, and it was like, oh, the drift, and people would turn it into a verb or an adjective. You're drifty, and people are where people are going to be, and that's okay. For people, though, like the idea in the Matrix, Neo starts out with just something not right here. Something's going on, and it leads him to be in discovery and in the question of, like, what's really going on? And then that leads him to Trinity, and Trinity takes him to Morpheus, and so begins his awakening. That's kind of what it's like, at least for me as I experienced it. The idea of, you're in the drift, really, it's just this place where we're on automatic. And how many people in life run on automatic? Their life just spins and spins and spins. The idea being that they have no agency in that conversation.
Mm.
We call them victims. Even the idea of victim, it's simply a choice that I'm going to go where it's going to go. But some people will be on the river and flow wherever the river is going to go. That's fine. Some people get a boat that has a rudder and they get some paddles and they learn how to navigate that river a little more intentionally so that they can start taking some ownership of where they want to go in their journey of life. Yeah, so when I hear you, that quote's not one of my favorite quotes, and I hear how it would be one of your favorite quotes because that's your experience and where you were
Yeah.
at that point. That's what's so when we start looking at the Matrix from the context of spirituality. That's where it becomes such a powerful movie. It can also be enjoyed just for the special effects and the science fiction of it. Again, it's a choice.
So, what were some of your favorite quotes?
The one that always comes to mind when I'm first asked, it's probably the first time I was pressed. Contextually, I go back to 1999. I was nowhere near any of these conversations in 1999. I was doing like I just described everybody else was doing. I was drifting, not in a bad way. I was in the flow. I was doing life. I was attorneying out there, and I was a new dad, and all of this stuff. And life happened to me. So when I first saw the movie when it came out in 1999, I ran to it a few times, and I think there was a book I read years ago called "What You Were Seeking Is Causing You to Seek." It's kind of like the Matrix itself. There was something in me that was hooked by that movie. My attention at some level, I think, was hooked, and I did not see it. And I think the first time I could even be present to it was when he first is taken out of the machine. He finally wakes up. He walks into the, I guess the comm center where one of the operators is sitting. It may have been Tank or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hands him a cup of the whatever it is, alcoholic brew that they had made, and he sees the matrix code on the screen for the first time, and he asks like the operator, let's assume it was Tank for a moment, although I'm not sure if it was, what is this? And Tank says, that's the code. He says, like, how do you see it? He says something like, I don't even see the code anymore. All I see is blonde, brunette, redhead. Now, I could only see the code as well, and I know it's only a movie, but it raised the puzzling thing of how could he possibly see anything in that code? All you see is the code, but he sees the blonde, the brunette, and the redhead. All these years later, I'm still in that conversation of trying to sort of see the code that we're in. And if I look out right now, I know intellectually around me, there's nothing but electromagnetic radiation. There's atoms and there's collections of atoms. There's chemicals and minerals and stuff like that. But at a very basic level, it's all atomic and subatomic particles. Yet when I look, I see Jael, I see Holiday on the screen, I see computer, lamp, wall, fan. I feel the air. So I don't even see the code anymore. Just like Neo couldn't see the code in the Matrix. But at the end, he sees the code, and not only sees the code, but takes control of it. That's why he's the one. It's his awakening, where he realizes that reality is what I make it. He takes full ownership over that reality and makes it whatever he wants to make it. And he flies as a result of it. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my
I
favorite jumping off place with the Matrix.
The furthest I can go in my mind with that is like when I'm reading a book, I'm no longer seeing individual letters. I am somewhere in my mind still seeing the
Exactly.
words, but then I'm actually in my mind seeing the picture as if it were, this other reality or this other movie and the characters and the
Exactly.
landscape.
There's an author. He passed away recently, Cormac McCarthy, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, and he wrote a book called All the Pretty Horses. And I, to this day, still can smell the candle wax in the room where the cowboy first starts walking in the opening paragraph, and I can still hear the cowboy's boots stepping across the wood floor. So powerful is his ability to use language, just that you said, letters, a code, put into a sequence to allow us to have a lived experience in our mind that I can literally smell and hear all these years later after reading that book. I don't, what you say about, all you can get to is that's it.
Yeah.
Substitute letters for atoms and you're there.
Yeah. There's another quote to go along with that where he says, I think it's the part where he jumped and he goes into the concrete and it bounces him back up and then he like splats on the concrete. And when he wakes up, from the chair, his tooth is bloody. And so he says, I thought it wasn't real.
Mm-hmm.
And the response, I think it might have been Trinity that said, your mind makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my experience. Like, my mind is what makes my projection, my interpretations, my assessments, my judgments, my assumptions make my experience real for me,
Mm.
whether they're actually happening or not.
Mm. That's an important part, whether they're actually happening or not. I think it's Mark Twain is attributed with a quote to something like, some of the worst things in life have never happened to me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I recall that quote.
Yeah, the things that we create up in our mind. How many times have we, I know I have, started a fight in my mind? Well, I'm going to say this. You're going to say that. I'm going to say this. I'm going to be that. And the next thing I know, I'm like worked up.
Mm-hmm.
It's all in my mind. What's most interesting about that, though, is we tend to do it with, well, I'm always careful to say the negative and the positive emotions. There's emotions. We make them negative or positive, and it's, I think, contextual. But let's assume for a moment that anger and frustration is a negative emotion for us. Doesn't get us to where we want to go in life. Usually that power for our mind to make it real is making it real with the boogaboos of our life. With the fears of what's going to happen if I lose this, or what's going to happen if I don't get this, and all that we experience, and our mind makes it very real. I mean, these days people suffer from anxiety and depression at record levels because of what their mind makes real for them. The thing is, because the mind, I think, really makes it real. The thing is that same power of mind makes the positive stuff real too. So if we start literally thinking rainbows and unicorns and living a life like that, and living a life of purpose, and stepping into being all that we want to be in our life, makes that real too. So you can actually have a sustained an experience of whatever it is you want to experience just by focusing your mind and your heart on it. Change your thought, change your world. Change your thoughts, change your world. Goes the saying.
Yeah, so my experience of the movie this time around, well, let me go back. When I watched it, I was about 12 or 13 or so when it came out, and I loved everything about it. And, as I watched it, as a teenager, as a young adult, I had this sense of like, I wish this was real. I wish I could generate my reality. I wish I could essentially like control my life and what's happening in my life, and was in that unconsciousness to it. And it was more of like I wish this was real. It would be really cool if it were. And over the last few years in the work of transformation, like really now coming into the understanding that, oh, I am generating my reality. Like, it is real.
Mm-hmm.
It is real for me now that I am the one. I am Neo in my life. And my reality is being sourced from me with my thoughts and my language and my beliefs. And whatever I'm busy believing about myself and the world, my matrix around me is going to construct, reconstruct, deconstruct itself to mirror back to me exactly what I believe.
It's the hero's journey. as I take it, for, starting to walk in a place that's in darkness and disillusionment into a space of, enlightenment, wokeness. Oh my God, we've taken such a great word and have
Mm.
vilified it. Um, but that's really what we're talking about here. All just sort of waking up to who we are and the power we have, just like Neo did. Interestingly enough, Marianne Williamson has a great quote that talks about it's not that we're afraid that we have no power, but it's afraid that we have unlimited power, and what that really means. If it's easy in life to say it's happening to me, I am not accountable, nor am I responsible for what happens. I'm powerless over it. And it's a valid form and way of living one's life, but it only gets the results that that viewpoint will get in your life. To get to a space of I am responsible, even to step into the idea of I'm 100% responsible 100% of the time for everything that occurs for me, is the hero's journey. And that's the hero's journey for Neo in the Matrix. He goes from having no power, like you started out with, what do I do, Morpheus? Go out the window or go out with them? It's his first choice, his first moment of like exercising that power, that self-determination, to when he finally stands up and says no or enough or whatever and stops the bullets, when he fully is the realized hero in the movie. And all that is just realizing what we do have and don't have power over in our life. But boy, it's a mouthful, because like Marianne Williamson challenges, if I have all the power, then why am I living this little life? Right? Why am I standing at on the sidelines throwing darts at what everybody else does around the world? The armchair quarterbacks of the world. And it's not an aspersion. We all sit there because it's a comfortable place to be. And it's a feel-good place, too. I can be very judgmental there. Oh, you're not doing this right. I don't like that. I don't like Jael's podcast. Meanwhile, the person's dreaming of doing a podcast, but they're in fear or whatever it is because they think they can't do it because of all their circumstances. And then here you are actually doing it, working through that. That's the difference of what we're talking about here. When we realize that we are all the power, then we start taking ownership of our lives and putting it into action. It's just such a great emergence, in that movie where he finally steps into it in the end. And how do we feel about the hero? Yes, he can fly, and he literally flies. It's like the metaphor. Realize he soars through the air and he has control over his world.
Yes, we are all Neo. We're all the
Yeah.
Neo in our Matrix.
All along the path of that. And it's always good to start from a place of non-judgment. There's no right or wrong place to be on the path, because every point along that path is necessary. It's like stepping stones. You're not getting to the next one without having experienced the first one and the second one and the third one and so forth. There's no shortcuts to it. Well, maybe there are. I haven't experienced any shortcuts. Maybe I have to do it the hard way and go stone by stone, and I can't leap. Although maybe
Yeah.
there's circumstances in people's lives where he leaps. Maybe like in that scene where, threatened with the loss of his, the love that he has of Trinity, which is starting to come up, and it's not quite there yet. He takes a big leap in that, where he takes the what is it, the fire hose or whatever, that the rope that's connected to the helicopter, and he wraps it around his arm dramatically, and he boom, or she shoots and he holds it, and he creates this whole circumstance to save her. It's the first real time that he steps into the power, but he does it out of necessity because he's about to experience a grave loss. Sometimes those situations show up in our lives as well. The big challenges and callings that may quicken the process.
Would you say that moment is the moment of understanding that became real for him, like understanding his love for her?
It's the beginning, I think. It's the beginning. It's the first time that he has a real experience and he sort of connects it to himself,
Of like what she means to him
of what she
in
means
that
to
moment.
him,
Yeah.
of what he's capable of. It's the next big step,
Yeah.
a quantum leap for him.
Yeah.
Sometimes we experience it, but we don't take ownership of it. I remember years ago the first time I experienced and recognized joy. Literally before this moment. This was like 10 years ago.
Mm.
It was around Christmas time, and I had this uncomfortable feeling. I was driving somewhere. I'm like, what is that? And it finally occurred to me, that's joy. That's joy. And prior to that time, I'm sure I experienced joy, but I had not put the experience of it together with the the languaging of it. Kind of like Heidegger talks about, Martin Heidegger, and the idea of logos, that we language our way into our reality.
Mm.
There's the example of, was it Helen Keller, that she didn't, they say, become fully human until she could ask for water and actually say the word, right?
Mm.
In her mind's eye. And in that moment, she became human. So until we language it, I didn't know joy, and until he languaged it and experienced it, Neo could not have become the one or fallen in love with Trinity. It was just like you might say in quantum mechanics, in the realm of possibility. Until he
Yeah.
focused and brought his concentration on it, it did not become reality for him.
Well, and this takes me back. I think my probably favorite interaction and favorite scene is when he goes to see the Oracle.
Mm.
I mean, that gets me, where she says, how does she say it? What's really gonna, I forget her exact words, kind of like what's really gonna get your goat is
Yeah.
if, when he thinks, she tells him about, don't worry about the vase. And in that moment, he knocks it over and it breaks. Oh, that's what she said. What's really gonna bake your noodle
Right.
is, would you have broken the vase if I would have said anything?
Yep.
So that
That's
whole interaction where I hear it as he doesn't believe he's the one, and she's not telling him that he is the one either. And essentially, the way I hear that conversation is, it doesn't really matter if he's the one or not until he believes it.
truly. Just like anybody watching this podcast is not going to magically come around to the idea that they're the one in their life, in their own way. It, we have to do it. We have to be it. We have to live it.
Mm.
That's the journey. Each of us has our journey. And that's the hero's journey. Some people waste it and just squander it. It's okay. It's okay. I at some point chose not to.
Yeah.
As did Neo.
It's a powerful place to stand. Whether this theory is the truth or not,
Who cares?
it's working.
Yeah.
It's effective for me to live from a place of responsibility and accountability. I'm creating it all. That sets me up to live from a place of power.
No, that's exactly the point. Far too many people get trapped into the "is it true" conversation. Who cares if it's true or not? Is it motivating for one's life? Is it generative? Does the viewpoint lead to the results that a person is looking to accomplish in their life? That is useful. And it doesn't matter if I walk around thinking I've got wings and I can fly. For me, as long as I don't jump off a building to test the theory, and that otherwise, leads me to my wildest dreams, great.
Yeah.
That's okay.
What I've loved about the work of transformation, that it's helped me transcend my limiting beliefs and my experiences that I was generating prior,
Mm.
and it's opened up all the possibilities, and I'm living in a whole new way, from a whole new place and a whole new experience.
Yep. And I've learned over the years not to, because I used to do it. I am a mind, body, and spirit being, and I was trying to think myself into
Mm-hmm.
a lived reality, but I couldn't think it. I also had to feel it, and I had to be it. So let's not forget the body, the conversation. It's important. I think in the world of transformation, we have our human experiences, and that is as much an intelligence in us as what comes out of our mind.
Would you take me back to the bend the spoon scene?
I assume everybody
Mm.
is kind of, seen that when he sees the kid sitting there and just sort of the spoon just sort of wobbling around, and they have a conversation about it. And uh, what does the guy say? The kid say, the trick is to realize that there is no spoon. It's like, you can't bend the spoon. That's impossible. You realize that there is no spoon. You bend yourself around the spoon. But what's really interesting in that moment is he looks at it, he holds the spoon, he says, and he holds the spoon, and then he just sort of goes like this, and the spoon kind of bends, and then he sort of snaps out of it really quick. And what exactly happens? Maybe that is one of the really first moments where he starts to get it, but it's almost at an unconscious kind of level where reality brings him back. And how much do we face reality in our own lives, with what we want to accomplish, our hopes and our dreams, our goals in our life, and we're told by people you can't, or we tell ourselves you can't, for all the reasons that people come up with. I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough money, I'm not good looking enough. It's really no different than being snapped back by reality to achieving what we want to achieve.
I'm working on that scene as well.
Yeah, it's on my desk somewhere. Years ago when I was in a trading, one of my friends gave that to me. It's a spoon that, it's like a spoon, but it has little bends in it, and it says, there is no spoon. Always reminds me of, I create the reality. The only spoons that exist in my reality are the ones that I actually, create and acknowledge. This gets to some wonky places, people. It's just like, is the spoon really real or is it not real? And this gets into a whole conversation about, like, one of the, I think, popular things to talk about is the holographic nature of the universe, that the universe is a hologram and it's created inside of my mind. But try reconciling the idea that, okay, I'm here and you're also here. I create you, Jael, but you're there creating me, as well, and how we collectively co-create the universe here. It even comes up in the Matrix as well. Who's the counter measure, the counterbalance to Neo? It's Smith, and Smith is also on his hero's journey. Smith is also waking up as well, but Smith is a different kind of character. It sets up a tension between darkness and the light. And then, of course, if you flash forward through all of the movies, what happens ultimately, to Smith and to Neo? They join, they become whole together. And as a result of that wholeness, the entire world is reborn.
So what would you say Smith represents for us?
The parts of us that we'd want to call dark, the shadow self, I would say. And there's a lot of folks that have done good work with shadow work, as they call it. And I believe it was a body of thought started maybe with Carl Jung some time ago. The basic idea being that we all have these parts of ourselves that we would call the darker parts. Anger, greed, lust, envy, the seven deadlies, that kind of stuff. And that we are taught or learn, or both, to stand in rejection of those things, repress them. But then they have this way of just blowing up, usually at the worst times, because they're not tended to. And the idea of shadow work is to basically learn to play nice with those parts of us, to not stand in judgment of them, not let them run amok in our lives as well, but to acknowledge them and learn to peacefully coexist with them. Even getting to the point of, I know I'd be the first to admit that, a good rage I enjoy sometimes. Rage is energizing, and if I rage in the wrong situation at the wrong time with the wrong people, though, it can be bad. Sometimes I get pissed off, and that's okay. And that's the point of the shadow work. It's okay. So Neo, at least as I sit here now, I don't know if I've really thought of it like that. You see, this just continues to move over time. I've not thought about this till now. Neo doesn't get comfortable with the fact that he's really Smith, and Smith is really Neo, and they come together, and the world is literally reborn in the movie because of that joining and that acceptance.
Yeah, that integration. So I would liken it to the ego. Like when I can integrate my ego and master the relationship that I have with it because it's there to keep me safe.
Yes.
But then I also beat it up in other situations.
Yes.
So I thank it when it has me look both ways before I cross the street. But then when I want to start a business and then it comes in with all the, don't do that and it's never going to work and you don't know what you're doing. And, then I want to like chastise it.
Mm-hmm.
Go away, I don't need you. But when I can master that and actually integrate it and get to the place of thank you, and I'm going to do this anyway. Like, thank you for wanting to keep me safe, and I'm going to proceed anyway. And be neutral with it. It's there doing its job and I get to be grateful.
Yes. And the first part of that process is simply becoming aware that it's there. And I think we can stand in stark rejection to parts of our humanity and not really be aware that they're a player too, equally. I don't believe that we as human beings are, on the whole, we're born with a full set of human characteristics and emotions. And there's no bad or good in there, although there are some people that will get in that conversation because that's what works for them, and that's okay. We bring the bad or good. We could bring philosophically debatable examples. We could debate the ethics of when perhaps anger may be appropriate to the circumstances, and when peace may not be appropriate to the circumstances, where one is neither bad nor good, or they become bad or good depending on the circumstances. It all gets to a matter of interpretation, I think. But when you get to the archetypes of light and dark with Smith and Neo in the Matrix, I love the idea that everything is reborn out of basically harmonizing those forces in us. One of the reasons I love science fiction is it often presents these kind of things. I love Star Trek. I love Star Wars.
Yep.
There's all kinds of golden age science fiction that I've read, and it's kind of like my window. It was really my first window, along with photography, into spiritual conversations like this. But the idea of the light and the dark, there's even an episode now I remember of Star Trek long, long ago where they literally, the two factions on this planet, is exploring race, and the one faction on the left side of their head, the left side of their body, they're white. On the right side of their body, they're black. The other side, on the left side, they're black, and on the right side, they're white. And as a result, they were killing each other into extinction. It was about harmonizing there as well. So anyway, it's a big conversation.
It is, and it's one that I'm happy to have any time, anywhere, any day.
Yeah, but it's a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong pursuit. Interestingly enough, in the fourth movie, often panned, Resurrections. What's his name?
Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris. Yes.
Yeah.
He refers to the people as sheeple, and it's kind of like if the shoe fits. Now you look at where we are at now as a society, and he says as long as you feed them what they want, they will do whatever you want. And I find part of why I pursue these conversations so aggressively is I am loath to be one of those people who, as long as I've just given my social media feed, I'm not really thinking. I'm literally thinking when I'm fed to think. And I choose to live my life other than that. Other than that.
Holiday, do you have anything that our listeners can incorporate or can begin to add?
That's a good question. I think first and foremost, I fought bringing a real meditation practice into my life. I don't quite know why. Maybe it's, there's a part of me that was threatened by it. Who knows? But once I started a daily meditation practice, a lot of things started shifting. It was almost like mucking out my mind to create some space for something new. And the practice of meditation was really the active use of that space to kind of explore it and see what's going on with me. There's no right or wrong way to do it. He's simply pausing for, I started with 2 minutes a day and then went from there. Just pausing at some point in the day and being at rest. And then the other thing that comes to mind is to play. I was far too serious. Far too serious. Go,
I can
go,
relate. Yeah.
go, do. Got to get this, got to do that, got to fight this, got to work this. Better, faster, stronger, better, more. Those are all fine and play. I tell my son who comes home, he's a junior in high school, and they give him far too much homework. He's always working and working and working, and I'm always telling his mom, like, the kid's got to play. I don't know other dads that go out there and say, leave your homework, go play, go out with your girlfriend, have fun. Because what it does is we rest. The mind, we've got to rest, and we've got to recharge. And it's not just a function of sleep. Play is wonderful. I don't know anybody yet that doesn't go and just do something as simple as take their shoes off and walk on the grass. That doesn't say, wow, such a simple thing. Just don't step in something and you might have that experience.
Thank you for
It
that.
might be a different kind of wow. So yeah, that's what I would say. Meditate and play.
Beautiful. Holiday, thank you so much for being on today. And how can the audience connect with you?
HolidayRussell.com. You can find a lot of information about me there, but that certainly will get you into contact with me. I'm also a professional photographer as well, and that might be my main spiritual practice. Interestingly enough, I get present with what is through photography, and that's my website, holidayslens.com. And then on Instagram, I'm more on Instagram than anywhere else, and Instagram is at holiday_Russell.com.
Thank you again for being on today. It's always a pleasure. I have so much fun talking to you.
Yeah, me too.
2%ers, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share the 2% podcast. Of course, you can watch it on YouTube or listen on all major podcast platforms. And we'll see you for the next episode.
Thanks, Jael.